I could get a thumbs up from somebody like once it started. It should take about 20 or 30 seconds. That'll be good. So we left off yesterday. I made a mistake in this spawn location section. I used the wrong action. I said spawn location, or not spawn location. I said enemy, and I chose move to object. That's the wrong one. The one that it should be is set position to another object. So that's moving the X and Y. So that one there, I fixed for mine. And now what I was able to do with that is here's spawn location 0, set position to spawn location 0. If it's 1, move to 1. So this is setting the position of the game. The other thing that I did was, remember, I took out a bunch of the code that had things spawning odds and evens on like the middle and the corners. I made it one code and I lowered the spawn time. I'm going to lower it even a bit more because I think that's a little bit too slow of a pace. So somewhere between 0.1 and 1 is when the enemy is going to spawn. And that gameplay looks a little bit like this once it's running. So now I'm starting to get more variety and less waves. So I could have like areas that are over flooded in a little bit. And I may take some time, and you can see I've got my scores running. But I always have an area to kind of retreat to now because they're not spawning middle corners every time. It could be like, one side is overloaded because it's random where it goes now. So it's a little bit easier to play. Everything else is still working, and we'll see. I get the game over message to pop up, but we'll take it from there in a second. So what we want to do now to keep going with the game over home screen logic is we want to add another layout for the home screen, and we want to add another event sheet for the home screen. So to do that, I'm going to go over to the Projects tab, not the Layers tab, but the Projects tab. I'm going to right-click on Layout, and I'm going to choose Add Layout. I will get a pop-up that comes up. If you click the wrong thing on this pop-up, it's an easy fix. So I'm actually going to recommend you add an event sheet as well. That way there'll always be an event sheet tied to the layout sheet. Bless you, bless you. But I'm going to say don't add event sheet because I want to show you that mistake. So it will not make a layout, and it will not use an event sheet. So I'm going to make a new layout. I'm going to call it Home Layout. And then I'm going to rename Layout 1 Game Layout. So now I'm realizing, oh no, I needed to have an event sheet with this. So I can right-click and choose Add Event Sheet. And I can call this Home Sheet. And I can rename Event Sheet 1, which has all my other stuff on it, Game Sheet. So I've got my game layout, my home layout, but now there's one step that you have to realize. Take a look at when I'm on the home layout. Home layout says, or not home layout, game layout says I'm tied to the game layout and I'm on the game sheet. When I go over to the home layout, notice how it says event sheet none over here. I have to click my drop down and select it. If I didn't make that mistake, clicking the software saying don't make an event sheet, that mistake, if I didn't make that mistake, it would automatically made it and tied it to the sheet, so when I renamed it, it would work. So back on this new layout, I can see I have the old size, the 1708 by 960. I want to change that to 854 by 480. So we're resizing it so it matches the window. I've renamed everything. I want to now add the background in. So here's the background for my project. I want to center it. So I'm going to just divide those numbers in half. I know that it's 427 for the width and 240 for the height. Now my background is completely centered. That's going to be it for this layer. So I'm going to switch over to Layers tabs, and I'm going to rename this layer to Background. And then I'm going to lock it. And then I'm going to make a new layer, layer 0. I'm going to rename it to Active Layer, because that's the one that we're going to be working on. So background is locked, active layer is here. And if I hit run layout, I'm going to change one thing real quick. I'm putting my animation speed back up to 5 to show an error. If I run my layout now, some of yours might be doing this, where it's just cycling through all the colors in order. That's because some of you might have forgotten to stop your animation speed, which is default set to 5 when you made the background. If you did that, there's 2 fixes for it. The first fix is going to be on the home sheet, where you can add an event for the system on start of layout. Add action to the background, and it's going to be stop. Animations, stop. So now when I run this again, the only difference now is every time I hit refresh, it's always going to be orange because I haven't given it command to be something else. So here's something cool you can do in Construct. I don't think I told Period 1 this. In my game sheet, I know that these 2 actions here will randomly assign a color to the background. So I already did the stop one to fix a problem. I'm going to highlight both of them by holding Control and clicking them both. Every time I click Control, I can add new ones, and I click again, it'll unselect them. I'm going to go Control C to copy these 2 things, come over to the event sheet, and go Control V to paste. So now if I test things out, and I refresh, I will get my random background color as I was expecting. So I didn't even have to retype that code. I was able to just go steal it from the game sheet. Now, we were able to do that on the event sheet. I also want to, on the home layout, I want to make a holder, a placeholder that's going to be for my button to play. So what the person is going to click on to play. So over here, I'm going to make a new sprite. That new sprite is going to go on the active layer. I don't care what size it is. I'm just going to make it the 250 by 250 size it defaults as. And I'm going to color it the black color, off black 250, 250, 250 for the red, green, blue values. So I'll put that in the center. Instead of sprite, I'm going to rename it BTN Play. So that'll be the button that the player clicks on to play the game. So on the home sheet, the next thing that I have to do is I have to add an event. And I'm going to do mouse. You could do touch or mouse. Touch would be more for mobile. Mouse would be more for computer. I'm going to do it for mouse. I'm going to say on, on object clicked. The action I'm going to choose is going to be if they click on the button play. The action that's going to happen is I'm going to ask the system to go to layout. This is stuff we've done before. And it's going to go to the game layout. So if we test this out, here I am with a random background color. Excuse me 1 second, I need a drink. Clicking in the color, nothing happens. Clicking on the actual item, I start the game. Okay? So that's working, but now we have to write some code that's going to take our game over pop-up window and turn it into a restart and to a go home button. So that's the next thing that we have to do. We stopped the animation, we did that. Back on the game sheet, I'm going to go down to the bottom, and I'm going to add an event. And that event that I'm going to be adding is mouse on clicked object. And the object is going to be BTN home. So BTN home is that button to go back to the home screen. When we click that, I'm going to add an action to the system, and it's going to say go to layout. And the layout we'll pick is the home screen layout. Now there's a bug here that's going to happen with this, and I'll show you it in a second. So remember on our layout, my BTN home is right about here. Okay? So I'm going to run this layout, and on my screen, right about here is the BTN home. So I'm playing my game. Let's say I click. I just went home during the middle of the game. Even though we can't see the button because it's invisible, it's still clickable. We only want to be able to click the button when the score, or not the score, but is alive is equal to 0. So on the game sheet, we're going to do another condition. So I highlight this line 22. I don't know what it is for you. You might have different numbers. But for me, it's 22. I'm going to click this. I'm going to add another condition to the system. I'm going to ask the system to go to the global and local variables and compare variable and say only let this happen when you click on the home and when is alive is equal to 0. So now when I run this again, and I bring it in, we saw the same thing. We know somewhere over here is going to bring me to the home layout. But notice I'm clicking now a bunch and it's not happening. But now if I let my character pass away, here's where I need to click, and it brings me back to the home layout. This brings me back to the play layout. All right. Now, let's do the same thing for the again button. So we'll add an event for the mouse on object clicked, and this one will be button again. And all we're going to do here for button again is system restart layout. So instead of going to another layout, we're going to restart the layout. Same thing, I can get an issue going where here's my character. Over here, somewhere over here is the button. And if I click by accident, I can restart the layout over and over and over again. Why do I want to say Dormammu? I've come to bargain. Anyways, so we want to add that same subcondition. This time I'm not going to press C. I'm just going to go Control-C to copy just this one part. If I hit the whole line and copy it and paste it, it'll add another one. We don't want the whole line. We just want this one part. So this one part is highlighted orange, yellowish. Copy that one part, click over here, paste. It'll add that condition in. Now I cannot restart the layout by clicking over here by accident. So now the game has to play. I think the last thing that I wanted to do was I wanted to show you how to add the keyboard keys to do WASD movements instead of having to shift over to the arrow keys. That's one of the things we talked about yesterday. So what we'll try here is back on the game layout, I'm going to double click and I'm going to find inputs. I'm going to add the keyboard as another input. So I'm going to click insert to add it. Now on the game sheet, I'm going to make a new event, and the event is going to be for keyboard, and it's going to be on key is down. So key is down. So when I'm holding down the W key, I want to make an action that the player will simulate control for the 8-direction movement, and I want it to simulate going up. Now I need to duplicate this a couple more times. So I'll go copy, Control-C to copy, and then paste for A, paste for S, paste for D. And I'll right-click it here, and I'll just kind of edit these events. So this key, I'm going to change to A. This key, I'm going to change to S. And this key, I'm going to change to D. Now, when A is pressed, I don't want to simulate going up. I want to simulate going left, because A is to the left. When S is pressed, I want to simulate going down. And when D is pressed, I want to simulate going right. So now I've got these controls that allow me to simulate when we're running. So now, if I run this, the game is going to be the same. But now my WASD keys can run my character around. And already, for me, it feels smoother. It feels like I'm more in control and I know where things are going. Just because that's what I'm used to when I play games for the computer, keyboard, and mouse. So that's just a change that you can make on your own. For right now, where the challenge shifts, let's see if we'll do one other thing on here. So if I hit this button here, it restarts the layout and it resets the game. I want to do one more enhancement over on the game over HUD. And I want to take this game over message and I want to right click and clone object type. And instead of being game over, I'm going to change the font to be the 5050. Oh, it's not going to let me pick the color. I have to go to custom. Other. Other. Custom. 505050. So I'm going to shrink the font down on this duplicated message. And then this one, instead of saying game over, it's going to say go home. And hey, look, it fits there in the go home button. So I may size it to be a little bit easier to grab. And then I'll duplicate this one because the text is already resized. And instead of being go home, I'm going to change this to play again. So now I've got go home and play again that are on here. Notice it changed it to text message 2 and 3. I could name these better things. I could say instead of txt message, this would say txt go home for that one. I could change this one. Oh, I changed it wrong. That's the play again. This one would be play again. This one would change from txt message 2 to go home. And I'm going to run into a slight issue where, take a look at what's on the screen right now when the game starts. So I've got some stuff that's sticking on the screen, but I only want it to be there when the game over thing pops up. So I could go into the code and duplicate the opacity on start of layout for text message for go home and play again. But I don't want to have to do more coding than necessary. So instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over to the project tab and I'm going to add another family. Right click, add family. And on this one, I'm going to pick text message. And notice once I pick the text object, it'll only let me show text objects. Go home and play again. So I made a new family. I'm going to call it HUD text. So now, on here, I can say for the game sheet, instead of saying text message, I can right click and replace the object and say I want to grab the HUD text. So all the HUD text will be turned invisible. Then over here, when is alive becomes 0 and the game is over, instead of turning the opacity for just text message back to 100, I'm going to right click, replace object, and I'm going to set the HUD text entire group of 3 back to 100. So when I run the layout again, the message is gone. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Go home, play again. Enemy is destroyed with a nice little fanfare afterwards. I can go home. This can be my play button. So the basic mechanics of the game should be working more or less. There are other enhancements you can add. You can add in more items, like maybe randomly the enemies will drop power-ups that your character can pick up to give them a shield, add back some health, give them rapid fire for a short amount of time. Maybe destroy all the enemies that are on the screen. Stuff like that. Those can be things. You could also maybe write in some logic for an enemy that has more than 1 health for this. The go home button shouldn't just be a giant rectangle on the screen. It should be the text that says, play, or that come up with a title screen, a theme. So on here, I think we've covered everything for this, but now your task is going to be using Piskel, Photoshop, or even Construct 2, come up with better overlays for the play button, for the home screen, and come up with a better theme, whether it's tanks or spaceships or actual battleships, like from the sea. Create your own unique artwork in Piskel to animated sprites, to the projectiles, to the enemy sprites. Come up with power-up that do things like rapid fire, explosions that could take out multiple enemies, freezing enemies, player shield, things like that. Like if I wanted to add in another thing, I could make an event that is attached to particles white and say, odd collision with another object. Can I do odd collision? I don't know if I can have particles collide with something else.
Where does it
Yeah, it doesn't overlap. Yeah, I'm not going to do that because it's not going to work this way. So we've done WASD. I could show adding another group in.
yes.
And the group that you could add would be for like WASD.
That's fixed. I don't think that's seconds. That could be ridiculous.
And then you could group these things together because you know it's the same key command for each key.
For like 5 and then the max to 10 and then check that out.
All right, so I think the basics are kind of here and laid out. I've got to flush out a little bit in the directions for the excuse me, for the code and for the health. But I'm going to stop the live stream now because I think we're done with the basics of the game, and we'll see if there's anything else that needs to be added in afterwards. So I'm going to end the stream here and say Happy Valentine's Day.